There you go, Lee. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Dissenting Graham Show, episode 6, brought to you by Dine and the Wool History Productions, where we bring you the news with a for real historical perspective and one that goes unregulated and unrestricted, and we talk about what we want, when we want, and ain't nobody ever gonna cancel us. So, this week has been interesting, and by interesting I mean the amount of times the elite can email each other talking about pizza party is the most impressive thing. Not just impressive, but stupid, right? I don't know if they were thinking that, hey, maybe these emails won't ever get out, or hey, maybe Jeffrey Epstein won't sell us out, because never mind the fact that he is working close with the Rothschilds, on the fact that he may or may not be dead, probably not, but the fact of the matter is that there were correspondence going on with each other, talking about pizza and hot dogs and other weird things, man, satanic rituals, goyim, all kinds of different things. And to the public, it hasn't been met with acceptance yet. And the reason why, I think, is because the news is playing it off like they don't exist, playing it off like it came from a source like QAnon or Julian Assange, where they've tried to steal as much credibility as possible from those guys. But now, recently, people are starting to say, hey, maybe we should have listened to Q when they pointed out that John Podesta might be talking about trafficking kids when it came to pizza parties. I mean, $40,000 worth of hot dogs seems a little weird to a pizza joint in Washington, D.C., but hey, who am I to judge? Now, again, what strikes me the most interesting here is that while it took this long to finally see it, we finally see that the elite are evil, satanic, the Talmud has the devil on top of it. We see this, we see them admitting this, but this isn't the first time this book has been written, nor will it be the last, and I think that now we should be able to wake up to that moment where we say, hey, maybe we need to start listening to people who have been yelling at us this entire time. The book first that I came across was written in 1926 by a Russian count by the name of Arthur Spiridovich, who came out and said, America, you need to wake up or you will lose your country to this group. They are evil, satanic worshipers, hell-bent on killing all Christians and all Christian values of the Western European Empire. They want it gone, they needed it gone, and they're going after it very successfully. All wars leading up to this very moment have been orchestrated, financed, and carried out on their watch. The division of America between the whites and the blacks, the poor and the rich, the north and the south, right, the east and the west, Russia versus the west, whatever, right? They have orchestrated this through their will, right? And so when we look at it, we say, maybe we should listen to this guy. And, he was almost heard, except his books descended into the depths of the annals of history when he was killed. And by killed, I mean killed. The official report said he was committing suicide by putting his mouth on a gas pipe. And unfortunately, for him, that ended poorly. But in the fortunate happenstances, people looked at that and said, hey, the gas pipe was off, and he wrote in his book just prior to publishing that, he'll probably met with death by this same group. And we need to start understanding that all these things in this global climate have everything to do with these emails that are coming out, with the Epstein files, who is part of the Landgrave of Hesse community, of the Holy Roman Empire, where, yes, the Rothschild, Mayor Anchel Rothschild, got all of his money selling, financing, brokering, exchanging, currency exchange really is where it came from. When it came to Landgrave Hesse sending troops to the American Revolution to die. He got paid per body, not per soldier, per body. When it was dead, then he could replenish by sending more. Well, Mayor Anchel Rothschild became filthy rich and started to fund things like the Frankist movement, the Masonry, the uniting the Masonry factions, the Illuminati, who's good friends with Adam Weishaupt. And so here we are now looking at the idea that this war is completely orchestrated. And so when we look at Iran, we need to understand that, again, these people are working behind the scenes. And who shows up in these emails way more than they should? Well, that would be, yes, our Father who art thou in Israel, right? So here we are looking at a trans-global war. And the question of what is the benefit or who benefits it now becomes more clear. Okay, it's not the Goyim. So join with me as we become the dissenting Goyim and we get the word out and understand. What do we understand here? We understand that we are living as the Truman Show. They are telling us and orchestrating our daily lives each and every step. And so it is time to wake up. Joining here in the studio, I have a special guest with me, right here to my left, Chelsea. And back in the studio is James the Elder. Now, understand this. We tried to record this episode last week, and it just didn't, it didn't just add up. We kind of were off that day. So we're trying this again to move forward and to make it better. And so far, I think we've got off to a pretty good start. Now, of course, it did help that the Epstein files were released, and it did help that Trump is failing miserably at these Iran talks, but it gives us more things to talk about. Now, we've had a lot of things go on leading up to this moment. We've had Venezuela. We've had, the taking of a president, destroying sovereignty and any international order for the fact that a donor who is an Israeli peddler gets his way in the oil field. We've had the talks with, Greenland, and I've seen that move forward somewhat. Now we're pushing on Cuba to give up their sovereignty, and we're pushing that. But more importantly, we have seen a lot of things develop in the Persian Gulf, and that's important because it will create a conflict greater than we want, more dangerous than we know, but with Russia and China devoting themselves to restoring the multipolar order and to restore the idea that we all have our constitutions and we need to live by them and not create unjust wars like America has done for the better half of the century here. It could have a positive outcome and a memorable consequence as to don't try this again. James, go ahead and tell us what we're looking at with Iran and where we have come from and where we're at now.
Well, we tried to kick off a color revolution. It didn't work, most probably because China and or Russia became involved with intercepting the communications and shutting off Starlink. It probably wouldn't have worked anyway. It's a fairly small minority of the population that was out in the streets. The casualty figures that were used for this for justification for doing something are greatly exaggerated. I've seen multiple accounts last week of people in Iran saying they were listed on the killed list for these protests that they were never even at. And a lot of deaths were caused by the sponsored groups who were randomly killing people in the crowds. to make it look like it was the police or military force doing it. So where we're at right now, the original invasion it was or attack that was supposed to happen around the 12th or 13th of January didn't. Trump has shot his mouth off repeatedly about how we're the strongest, greatest, blah 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 blah. The reality is, in the Persian Gulf, with what we had there, we could probably I don't want to associate myself with the United States could probably carry on an offensive war for about 5 days. The Gulf states have closed their airspace, which doesn't mean the U.S. won't violate that anyway. Um, and they're having to stay about 1,000 miles off the coast to stay somewhat out of range of the Iranian missiles. The Russians and the Chinese have been coordinating their actions on this, and they're probably providing expanded command and control communication capability for the Iranians. It just doesn't look very viable, and I think there are probably a lot of military planners that are talking to the president and Hegsmith right now saying, not a good idea. For this to work, it'd have to be a absolutely incapacitating strike, and then you'd have to have a revolution kicked off on the part of the people that are already in the country, the groups that the CIA and Massoud have worked with. And that's not going to work either. It's too small a group of people. They're isolated in certain areas. On the negative side, you could easily get some very large-scale retaliation against U.S. bases and this battle group. It's not inconceivable you'll see a destroyer or an aircraft carrier sunk here. I hope he takes a step back, but he's I don't know, flip a coin.
Yeah, so let's approach this from two angles here, because one of the terms that he was talking about was honoring the rights, the human rights of the collected victims of that failed color revolution. And so let's approach this first from the idea of Starlink, right? When it comes to Starlink participating in a color revolution, is that, I guess, for a country who supports, right, Elon, for the most part, people support somewhat what he's done with space travel and launching these things, but at the same time, for a country that's so fearful of a surveillance state, is that not alarming to anyone that Starlink can operate in a way that helps not just commit a color revolution, but participate in intercepting and intercepting and kind of tapping in from, the first heaven, if we look at the biblical accounts, and sending it back and kind of, it's like spying. It's the ultimate surveillance. Is that not a problem?
Well, it probably should be, but very few people would think it to be today, I believe. So it makes civilian technology sort of pseudo government technology, and in aerospace, I guess that's always existed. The what's gone on in Iran though is a standard CIA playbook. It's been done for a long time. Nothing unusual about it at all. And then you look at Minnesota. We're having the same thing done to us by other players there. So in one case, it's an obvious attempt at a color revolution. On the other case, it's a indigenous quest for freedom. Come on now, ridiculous.
Yeah. It's an interesting point is that Minnesota, while we do not like what's happening there, right? And there's been anti-ICE protests. If you look at the Olympics just this morning, for some reason in Italy, right, they were having these anti-ICE protests, which is anti-IDF, which really is the irony here in that situation. But we don't like that it's happening to us. But yet you have some people that are want to accept these people without ever knowing that is a smaller, less sophisticated version of a color revolution, right?
Exactly is. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, how we know, I know a lot of people are saying, well, how do we know it was a color revolution committed by the CIA? And I think that, and not IDF, but
that's what I was going to ask. Like, what do you know? How do you know color revolution?
Right. And so what people want to ask that question, right? How do you know that this is the case? And to my knowledge, when you see something that shows up in a peace talk or a war diversion talk is what I'm going to call it, because that's all it is. It's not peace. Nothing about this leads to peace. And everybody should understand that, is that the fact that they asked for Iran to honor the human rights of people that were trying to overthrow the country funded by Western powers, right? It's like that was a dead giveaway. Anybody in their right mind should say, oh, the fact that that was even in that conversation tells me one thing. We are admitting guilt to trying to overthrow that country.
Well, if I go back to Chelsea's question a little bit further, excuse me, I lost my train of thought there for a second. The color revolutions are funded by outside entities. They're organized. They have staging. You have materials supplied. They generally have a couple of 3 or 4 groups that they work with, and they have to have communication. So that's what's different between that and a indigenous, let's go get some signs and protest something. They become violent very quickly. And something interesting in Iran just a couple of days ago, they intercepted a massive cache of what's considered mayhem weapons, which are like small knives, brass knuckles with a knife on it, these types of things to interject into crowds. That was coming in from the outside. They got it going through their normal northern border. These are things that show you're dealing with a color revolution, not just some people that are upset because the prices went up. And the original event that started the whole thing was an attack on their currency. So the economy might not be managed very well, but that it specifically followed a coordinated attack on the real.
Right. So let's bring up that the economic question actually real quick. I know we're kind of jumping around, but we're saying within that sphere is that Bitcoin has been free falling, right, over the past week and a half now. I have seen things where Iranians have, been Iranian. I know I'm probably saying it somewhat wrong. I'm okay with that. Have been investing in Bitcoin, but have also been kind of pulling their stock out of that. Right? Is there a connection here, and does that signal a sign that they were trying to let whatever assets they had tied up in there kind of be a undoing of their economy?
Well, I guess Iran could have some role in it. More likely, China would have a role in it. I've seen a lot of things going on with Bitcoin. I know it's been down and volatile. I can't substantiate anything. It's very, very possible there's some intentional international players involved with it.
Okay. Yeah, I've been trying to track that, and that was a question I had as far as are we working at doing that, right? Or is that something? And then I guess I didn't think about the China aspect. If China had any hand in dropping it and trying to undo kind of Trump's pledge to provide online, or essentially digital currency, right? Anyway, move forward, right? So
wait, but Bitcoin isn't owned by anyone.
If you're invested in it and it crashes, it is kind of owned by you, or you own a portion of it. Yeah, so it's like any asset that crashes.
It's like a huge chat room where everybody has the owner's manual.
As a part of it, right? They all do invest very well in it. I know I have minimal investment in Bitcoin. But that's the thing, though, right? Is that means you get any group of people to kind of go on a run with it, and then you have this problem, which is where I was kind of looking at it. I was approaching it from the run aspect, right? It almost resembled a run on a bank, where it starts to essentially sell, right?
But wouldn't you need to all do it at the same time?
Not necessarily at the same time, but within that same span of time, right?
If you have big players, they can cause something to move rapidly and dramatically up and down. It's not like you have a large population where everybody owns roughly the equal share. You have, again, the big players that own big chunks of it, and if they all dump it, the price is going to go down dramatically.
Okay.
Yeah. Moving forward, right? So the idea that honoring human rights of people trying to overthrow your country, which, by the way, if it were, again, if I'm going to pull Rand Paul here, if the shoes were on the other foot here, right, or if it was across the Atlantic in our thing, anyone trying to undo the government, that it was provable as a rebellion, right, under the Militia Act of, I think Lincoln used 1807 or 1809 or one of those two. It's provable under that, right? For something like that to happen here, it would be high treason, and that was death by hanging, but that does qualify under a somewhat of an instant death penalty, right? And so, who are we to ask that question of honor the men that we paid to overthrow your government? Which, knowing that the penalty of that does come with death if you're wrong.
It absolutely does. It's not even a military sort of crime. They're essentially spies, agents of a foreign government. They're guilty of treason. If somebody's out there protesting because the stuff they're buying at the supermarket costs too much, that's a different matter. But if you're paid by an outside entity, you're coordinating with the outside intelligence services, and you're acting as their employee, basically, you are a spy. You are guilty of treason. They could certainly rightfully be executed for that.
Right, and especially if you're moving towards a proper war, a spy to any conflict is you're going to die. Even looking back through all of our wars, even the American Revolution, right, all the way back that far, is that you're being hung, and it's death by hanging, and if not dead, when after a short amount of time, you get to be lifted up by your legs and then drop back down, right? There's no honoring human rights in that aspect. So it's like, why would we expect something like that to people that we've already done this to?
The U.S. always tries to make the high road argument that we're supporting freedom fighters. The difference between a freedom fighter and a terrorist is just who's on your side and who's on the other guy's side at this point. It's absolutely ridiculous. And the people that still buy this, they astound me, but they won't change.
Yeah, that's something I talk about too when it comes to that aspect that we play the good guy. And I know we've trashed Trump a lot, which now I'm going to trash Obama real quick, is that Obama was the guy that said, oh, we're honoring Syrian rebels who have had their human rights violated, this and that, and then they turn around, they give them weapons, and then those rebels turn around and become ISIS, and start violating those human rights across the world. And so it's like this constant, and that's another thing to look at. What would the outcome be of that, right? We would open up another door that would look similar to that.
If you're trying to overthrow the government, you don't have a human right to do that.
Yeah,
we can go way back to Jesus's teaching in the early church period and see the contrast between the revolutionary and the non-revolutionary. There is not a Christian tradition in revolution, and some of the dissenting groups that came here supposedly looking for religious freedom, Puritans in particular, we got the Diggers and the Quakers. These weren't just religions; they were political functions. They were revolutionaries. You can't claim religious consciousness when you're trying to overthrow the government. You're a political activity at that point.
Right, even with Augustine and the just war concept that people try to use all the time is that if someone cuts off your right to live or tries to take your right to live away, you get to defend yourself in an act that becomes just because you have that natural, I know they like to say natural right, so I'm going to say it, that natural, unalienable right to survive in this world without someone telling you or taking that from you.
Yeah, and natural rights. Yeah, you can make a Christian case for natural rights, but it's really more of an enlightenment concept. It's more natural to make it in that regard. And if you go back, say, to the time of Jesus, there were all kinds of messiahs running around. What's unique about Jesus? He came to save people from sin, not to save them from the Romans or to set up their own world government. That wasn't the type of Messiah anybody would have recognized then, and unfortunately, it's not one that's usually recognized now.
It wouldn't be, and that's the thing. I think that Fyodor Dostoevsky, made that point clear, very clear, in his books. Definitely right. So let's look at the idea. I know we're not going to push from a moral standpoint, but we can honor that somewhat. Let's look at where we're at with Iran, right? So if we look at the talks, so we move from the color revolution, Elon, trying to do his thing with the Starlink, which failed miserably because China and Russia seem to be smarter than him. Then we move to these talks, right? This is another aspect of trying to take Iran's right to live away, in my opinion, right? Is that you have first and foremost honor the rights of the people that were trying to overthrow your government. Secondly, give up your your defense system to survive as a government, right? That was one of them. Where were they going with that? And did they think that was going to be a reasonable conversation after everything that we've done to them, which they know and the entire world knows? Did they think that was going to be a reasonable situation to go for?
I can't imagine it. There are a lot of people in this country that will buy that argument, and unfortunately, they're kind of my demographic, the people that are on Fox News all the time. But no one with any knowledge of history or foreign relations, international law, anything like that, could possibly think that was a starting argument there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And that's the one thing, I know little people say, well, they chant in the street, death to America. Well, we also have to ask the question, why are they doing that? And then look at the history, right? And in my mind, they have a valid reason to justify that. And what we're seeing now is the reason why, right? You have that, let's take away the defense system. But the question is at the same time, with terms like these, did they think that, that was going to be somehow opportunistic for them with the other powers in the region? Where the other powers were going to see that and go, yeah, you do that to Iran without saying, one day you might do that to us?
Yeah, it's completely destabilizing. And did either you or Chelsea, you were born kind of at the end of that. So you had the Iran-Iraq war, and then you had the Gulf War, which you probably remember a little bit of. These were very destabilizing events, and we were right in the middle of them. They have a lot of people in that area, but especially in Iraq and Iran, they have plenty of reason not to like us.
Right, and that's, I've got to be honest, right, is that I was not so much aware because that happened when I was younger. But now the things that I do remember, and I look at this event, right, and I go, okay, now a lot of stuff, without reading much on it, is starting to make more sense, right? Outside that, I've got to give props to Scott Horton, because Scott Horton's a lot of my source on these wars, and he's probably arguably one of the best foreign policy analysts around. But a lot of it starts to make sense because, when you look at what Gaddafi says is that, the weakness, and this is where Trump failed with this one because he messed up with these terms, is that the Arab countries or regions there were weak because they couldn't unite. Right? They couldn't unite. They couldn't figure out what's going on, as Gaddafi was obviously trying to unite them under one currency and kind of that one economy there.
But he was kind of saying, leave us alone. Like, this is our country,
Yeah.
and like, let us handle it how we want to handle it.
Yeah, it was leave us alone, let us be, and we don't need your intervention. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, right. But what we're seeing now with Trump and these terrible terms is that these terms are starting to get those groups to wake up, right? How does this affect the global shift of power, right? As far as the East versus the West, right? Is obviously they're forcing us to give Europa back.
Yeah.
So where are we at? And let's kind of analyze this from the war perspective now, right? Is that if we make a move, what are some of the repercussions as far as not just Iran but everybody else goes?
Do you believe we're going to be in World War III?
Well, there's a possibility of that. I think Russia and China are trying to stabilize things as much as possible. And keep in mind, they're winning. The Western globalists are not. So what could happen? Well, a lot of weird things that could happen. I think most likely, if we do choose to launch an attack, it will be fairly large, but it's not going to be that successful. And the Chinese and the Russians are going to make sure it's not going to be that successful. There's going to be massive retaliation against the U.S. bases and against Israel. Israel will, probably the worst possible outcome is if Israel gets blasted and launches a nuclear weapon. That's not going to end the war either. By the way, Iran's a big place. It could escalate pretty dramatically. I don't know that it will. I hope it doesn't. But you have to. It's a risk management sort of thing. You got to look at the bad outcomes with the good ones.
Does Iran have enough power to bomb the U.S.?
Not the U.S. directly, and I don't think they'd have any desire to. But they do have enough power to reach the battle group. They have enough power to reach all the U.S. bases in the area, and they have enough power to attack certainly Israel and any other Gulf state that's seen as being complicit here. And they have some very impressive conventional missiles. The one that was kind of rolled out last week is 2,000-kilometer range. So keep in mind that with the aircraft carrier, Abraham Lincoln, and the destroyers with it, they're so far out to sea to try to maintain some kind of safety from this that by the time, like a Tomahawk missile goes from there and gets over land, it only has about I think a 500-kilometer range after that. They're getting right to the edge of their distance.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think, because being around the military a lot and that type of thinking is the idea that they really believe that our weapons are the best, right? But as we look at what happened in Ukraine with all the stuff that we gave, Ukraine, is that Russia rolled in and just dominated, right? And with the showing of the weapons that they're giving Iran, it's like those hypersonic missiles. I don't even think that the U.S. Abraham Lincoln would have any, hope of even having a reaction time to that.
The counterpoint to that is to say that shooting a missile at a ship is hard because it moves. But now the answer to that is, yeah, it does. But if they have Russian and Chinese help, like we do the missile spotting and planning and everything for the Ukrainians, they will know that it moved and they'll be able to adjust that. So that's a solvable problem. It's true that a moving target is harder, but again, it's a solvable problem.
Yeah, but they also admit that they got better at maneuvering it, though.
They are, but the thing is, you have to know where it is.
Where it is, okay.
Through the targeting process, you really need to have the C3 ISR capability, so you can see the whole battlefield. and you can keep track of it as it moves. Which you have to have satellite capability for that. Now, if again though, that's what's so important about the Russians and Chinese working with the Iranians. It gives them that, and also there's going to be a joint Russia, Chinese, Iranian naval drill in 2 weeks. So whatever Trump is going to do, that's the time limit. He has to operate between now and then.
Yeah, it's got to happen before then, right? Because you don't want to be on the water. And to be fair, not fair, I'm sorry, to be honest, is that anytime we see Abraham Lincoln, we know that death follows, right? Anytime we see his name. And so I think they're pushing this. Now, so I'm going to think like Trump for a minute. Can we think like Trump? Right? Is that I don't think he quite understands the severity of what he's caused, right? We're looking at the regional war. I know the analysts there that are in the Department of, as he called it, Department of War, right? Are looking at it from the bigger picture, but Trump himself was really looking at it from looking at Iran, right? And seeing that we're going to jump in there, we're going to dominate them, and there's going to be no repercussion because we're going to go establish ourselves. How fast, right? Say they get successful, get within range, and manage to launch that sea to land attack. How fast do they have to get in there and install a government with legitimacy without the region and Russia and China knowing?
Yeah, that's the point. It's not going to happen. the groups that the U.S. has worked with over there are going to be extremely generous and say maybe they represent 5% of the population. That's not saying that the current government is extremely popular, but it's more popular than these. Certainly, the idea of having the Shah's son come back, it's just entirely unrealistic. Trump could win his whole presidency here too.
Right.
This could turn out very, very bad. This is such a bad idea. It makes Vietnam look like a good idea.
Right, and that's where we're at. This is why Venezuela was a bad deal for everybody, because it gave him the impression that he would be able to, do what he wants in a short amount of time. It was the same thing with Bill Clinton and his war. When you go in there for a week or two and then realize that you've had almost a bloodless war, but you've claimed you won. Now we know that because we had to go back and that we didn't really, and we still didn't win. We just left. It was the Vietnam effect as well. It started this idea that he, for some reason, thinks that he can do things without having repercussions to him, right? Like, would he get? I mean, like, for another question is, would he get in there, put a proxy government in there, and then
without
do all that before the Strait of Hormuz gets shut down, right? It's like then he's got a whole different problem.
Yeah, without putting troops around, it's not going to happen. The Iranians know who these groups are, where they're based out of. There's no way you can control the ground there without a massive land invasion. It can't happen. It won't work.
Right, you have to have a D-Day style invasion,
and the place is enormous. It's I think it's 3 times the size of Texas.
Right, it's almost unconquerable.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. Even with the diverse population there and the misfits of people that they have, that the British installed there, but you then have to deal with those. And I don't think that the region around them would accept this rule. I don't think it would be.
No, they won't. They won't. They've made that clear.
And it's like Trump's facing the fact that we have on the western side of the Persian Gulf, we have 10, 15 military bases there, right? Those will be gone.
But is Trump trying to make you focus on Iran just because he's maybe doing something bigger over here in like Greenland, or because I mean, I'm looking at it from a psychology perspective. Okay, get them focused on this, get them focused on this, and then they won't realize what we're doing over here with all this oil and everything else.
No, he could, I guess, if he was smart enough, and he might. If maybe the donors that are keeping him hostage are trying to do that, is go distract the world this way while we do something over here. But at the same time, you have now got yourself in a situation where you have to say, I was wrong. I did that as a distraction. Now I got to get out of this somehow, or you got to pull the trigger, right?
Well, yeah, I kind of go the other way and say a lot of the things he's done have been a distraction for what he's doing in the Middle East.
Okay, played that game that way, right? And that's another question with we can connect the Epstein files, is that when you have Israel too, Bibi is obviously in these meetings, right? Is that for them, that region could flip just as quickly against them after this, right? Is that we could start a regional war, but that regional war is not just going to be a single front war. They're going to turn right back around and march their way up to essentially quit what's been doing all this, right? They're going to cut the head off the snake.
Eventually, I think they would come to that conclusion. That requires some short-term pain, but the situation they've been living in is would probably justify absorbing that as an acceptable cost.
Yeah, it's just yeah. So for America, so let's satisfy the America first, right? Idea, and people can say what they want, but this is going to be a tough one to handle and swallow here. Is that we go the other way, right? Is that what does America get out of this? From what
absolutely nothing.
From what I understand, we don't get anything out of this. We get like the death of Americans, right? That's what we get. But we don't get anything that's a tangible gain for us.
The ordinary people do not get anything that's a tangible gain. Let me go back to one of your original points. The merchant elite, which is obviously something that's heavily Jewish, has a few compliant, high-ranking, very wealthy goyim in it. If you plot their movements throughout history, where the people go, where the capital goes, civilizational collapse follows it. It's like you move into some place, you destroy it, you take their assets, and then you go to the next place, which is the way debt works. If you have a debt-based economic system, it has to continually move, continually expand. It now has no place to go. Europe's collapsing. The U.S. is the tool of this sort of global cabal, and we're collapsing. And if it can't continue to swallow other areas, it's reached a terminal point. And I think they certainly know that. I don't think most people grasp that, but it's when you deal with exponential expansion, it's grow or die.
Right, and so, but that's again. So then that brings me to my next question, right? It's grow or die. What if we die?
Yeah, like what is going to keep America interested in learning about this? Like what has to happen? Like the Epstein files, obviously.
Epstein files. So let's look at Charlie Kirk case. It's kind of related. So Candace Owens is saying she's going to bring the theory of the crime next week. There have to be some things on a grand scale and then a lot on the smaller scale that call people's attention to the fact that we've been manipulated for a very long time to get out of the left-right dialectic that, people, especially the Fox News crew, the enemy is the left. It's the left. It's the left. It's the left. Now, the people that created the left and the people that created the neoconservative right are basically this at the point of origin the same group of people. They're.
But what if people don't like that? Don't look at politics. Don't, you know?
Well, ignorance
I'm not
has
interested in that. I mean, that's the majority of everyone in the world nowadays. I mean, you're either so focused on it, or you're like, get me far, far away from that. And then they don't ever listen to anything that's said to them.
Yeah, and that's really hard. You don't need to have a majority, but you need to have maybe 10% of the population that really grasps what's going on. The critical mass. And the Charlie Kirk case is prominent enough that if that turned out to be something that could be definitively traced to intelligence agencies and foreign governments, you know which one I'm talking about, that's the type of thing that could be completely eye-opening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there. The evangelical churches, that's really the thing that keeps this going. People there need to question what they think they know and what they believe and wake up. The idea that you could have, they're doing this openly, foreign governments trying to influence churches and churchgoers in America is obscene, but they're doing it out in the open.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that Charlie Kirk was the last straw for all of us to understand that we know, and Turning Point's they're not doing a good job of hiding, is that we know that was not the old left, transgender, there's no, if we were to look at creating a case, there's no case there for that, right? We know that this is more than that. And I think that if that you're right, if that information did get out, it could be something that changes the game, but at the same time is how we got to break enough of that conspiracy, thinking. And I'm not going to say we are, the conspiracy theorists, but people assume everything's a conspiracy except for what the government says in the mainstream media.
Because they pay their bills. Yeah. They pay their bills, and they're on welfare, and it's as simple as that.
And that was part of the grand plan too, to create a dumbed down, ignorant population, and they did a real good job of it
and they're doing it right now in schools.
They've done it for 80 years. It's just been progressively worse.
Yeah. So, but because you brought up Candace, I gotta say, either I'm a Standis or Candace is a Justin stand, because man, she started bringing up things I have been saying for years. I'm glad she brought them in the conversation. I'm glad she brought the not just the Epstein, but the Gilgamesh files into the conversation with this, because it brought a whole new aspect to not just what she's talking about, Charlie Kirk, but with just the whole thing that we see now. It's like there's a greater purpose and plan for them, and they're pushing these ideas that that goes. I guess it goes along with the ritualistic aspects and the religious aspects for them. We see it now. They're chasing the divine, the divinity, to become that. And they think that because we're too stupid to realize that they're going to get away with it regardless.
Yeah, so if you go back, say, to when 1950s, 1960s, which is my childhood, not 50s, I'm not quite that old yet, but the society seemed to work. It was degrading gradually, but it seemed to work. The population had a high degree of faith in the institutions. They believed in the government. They believed in the basic goodness of people. Now, moving forward from there, there's absolutely no reason to have any faith in any sort of institutional answer or power or narrative at this point. Anybody that does is just really naive, and maybe there's nothing that can reach them. I don't know. Skepticism is what's called for. One of the things the Russians have is skepticism. They lived under Marxism for a long time. They knew everything that came out of the government was not particularly believable, but neither was what came out of the West. They are very skeptical. They think about things, and that's what we need to get back to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we will cap it off there for tonight, and this went incredibly well. I enjoyed the conversation. We will keep watch on Iran. We will keep watch on Venezuela. Any updates? We'll keep watching kind of the movement, and even Greenland here, and see how this is kind of shifting the power, the transglobal power, the transglobal climate. And by next week, we hope that we don't have to talk about World War III, but we might be talking about that, right? And so, especially as we see more things come out, and we'll start to touch on domestic. I know some of y'all are hoping that we get to the domestic aspect of things and not just briefly mention the Epstein files in the introduction. We'll touch up on it because it is something worth talking about. So we'll have a part for it next week. But until then. You have become, in this episode, the dissenting Goyim, and I hope that you hold that title with honor. Thank you for tuning in to the Dissenting Goyim Show, episode 6, brought to you by Dyed in the Wool History Productions. Please if you liked it, please share it around. Even if you didn't like it, share it. Comment if you got a comment, and subscribe to the channel, please. We love seeing new faces. We've had a bunch roll in this past week and a half, and we enjoyed that. Please add to the conversation. Don't make it stupid. Make it useful. And until next time, next Thursday, we will see you later.